Captain Dae-hyun stood at the edge of the massive chamber, trying not to show how nervous he felt. The Galactic Council chamber was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling went so high that clouds formed near the top. Hundreds of alien species sat in floating seats that moved around the room like slow-moving stars. He had dreamed of this moment for 20 years. First contact with alien life, peace between humans and the galaxy, a chance for his people to join something bigger than their small blue planet. But the dream was turning into a nightmare. Admiral Sora stood beside him, her face calm but her hands tight behind her back. She had fought in 3 wars on Earth and never looked scared. Today she looked worried. Dr. Bin sat at a small table nearby reading data on his tablet. His job was to study alien life, but now alien life was studying him back. The Vorthak delegation sat across the chamber. They looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. Their skin was dark green with gold marks that showed their rank. Their eyes were black and cold. Ambassador Kyle was their leader, and he had been talking for an hour about why humans should not join the galactic community. "These humans are dangerous," Kyle said, his voice deep and rough. "They fight wars on their own planet. They build weapons instead of art. They kill their own kind for land and resources. We have watched them for 50 years and they have not changed." Dae-hyun wanted to speak, but the rules said he had to wait. Only council members could talk during the first session. He was just there to be looked at like an animal in a zoo. "The humans sent military ships to greet us," Kale continued. "When we tested their defenses with small raids, they fought back with violence. They destroyed our scout ships. They showed no interest in peaceful surrender. The chamber filled with noise as different aliens talked to each other. Some made clicking sounds. Others used colors that flashed across their skin. A few spoke in languages that sounded like music. None of it sounded friendly." Admiral Sora leaned close to Dae-hyun and whispered, "They're talking about the colony raids. 3 times in 2 years, unknown ships attacked our outer settlements. General Hyunwoo had to send defense fleets." Dae-hyun nodded. "Those attacks had killed thousands of people. Men, women, and children living on new worlds trying to build better lives. When Earth ships fought back, they thought they were defending innocent people. Now he learned those attacks were tests. The aliens had been testing human reactions like scientists testing lab rats." A new voice spoke, old and tired but somehow strong. "I would like to address the chamber." Everyone turned to look. In a corner that had seemed empty, a figure slowly stood up. It was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that looked like it was made of light. Its eyes were large and silver, and when it moved it seemed to float instead of walk. "Counselor Veltar of the Zeridian Collective," someone announced. Many aliens in the chamber made respectful sounds. Others became very quiet. Dae-hyun had read about the Zeridians in the files Earth's intelligence teams had gathered. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been exploring space when humans were still living in caves. They never fought wars, never took sides in conflicts, and rarely spoke in council meetings. Veltar moved slowly to the center of the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner without him needing to shout. "I have been watching these humans for a very long time," he said, "much longer than the Vorthak realize. We have observed their species for over 2,000 of their years." The chamber became completely silent. Even the floating seats stopped moving. "The Vorthak speak of human violence and aggression," Veltar continued. "They are not wrong. Humans do fight. They do build weapons. They do compete with each other. But the Vorthak do not understand what they are seeing." Ambassador Kale's skin changed color, showing anger. "Counselor, with respect, you have studied their wars," Veltar interrupted. "But you have not studied why they fight." The old alien turned to look directly at the human delegation. When his silver eyes met Dae-hyun's, the captain felt like Veltar was looking into his soul. "Humans do not fight because they are evil," Veltar said. "They fight because they do not know how to give up. When faced with impossible odds, other species surrender or die. Humans find a third option. They adapt. They learn. They become stronger." Veltar's voice grew stronger, filling the chamber with authority that came from age and wisdom. "I have watched humans survive ice ages that killed most life on their planet. I have seen them cross oceans in tiny boats when every reasonable being would stay home. I have observed them split the atom and touch the stars despite having such short lives." The alien paused, letting his words sink in. The Vorthak believe they can control humans through force. They think a few battles will teach humans their place in the galactic order. This is a mistake that will cost them everything. Ambassador Kale stood up, his large form towering over the ancient Zeridian. Counselor, you speak as if these primitives could threaten the Vorthak Empire. We have conquered 17 star systems. Our fleets number in the thousands. Our weapons can destroy planets. Veltar looked at him with something that might have been pity. Yes, he said quietly. And if you use those weapons against humans, they will study them, improve them, and build better ones. If you send fleets against them, they will learn your tactics and develop counters. If you conquer their worlds, they will take them back and conquer yours in return. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens argued, clicked, flashed colors, and made sounds Daehyun had never heard before. Some seemed angry, others confused, a few appeared frightened. Through it all, Veltar remained calm. He turned to look at Daehyun again, and this time the captain thought he saw something like sadness in those ancient eyes. I have seen species make this mistake before, Veltar said, though now he was speaking directly to the humans. They see your kindness and mistake it for weakness. They see your desire for peace and think it means you cannot fight. They believe that because you choose not to be monsters, you cannot become them. Admiral Sora stepped forward. The rules said she could not speak, but her movement caught everyone's attention. They are wrong, Veltar said, still looking at her. When pushed too far, humans do not break. They become something new, something their enemies cannot prepare for or defend against. War Commander Thex, who had been silent until now, stood up next to Ambassador Kale. He was even larger than the ambassador, with scars across his skin that showed he had fought many battles. The Old One speaks of myths and legends, Thex said, his voice like grinding metal. The Vorthak Empire deals in facts. These humans will learn their place or they will be removed from the galaxy. There is no third option. Veltar turned away from the humans and faced the Vorthak delegation. When he spoke again, his voice carried a warning that made the air itself seem heavy. There is always a third option with humans, he said, and if you force them to find it, you will regret the day your species learned to fly between the stars. The session ended with no agreement. The humans were dismissed while the council continued to debate. As they walked through the massive corridors of the station, Admiral Sora finally spoke. Do you think the Old One was trying to help us or warn them? She asked. Daehyun thought about the sadness he had seen in Veltar's ancient eyes. Both, he said. The alarm started screaming at 3 a.m, Earth time. Admiral Sora was pulled from sleep by the sound every military officer feared most. She was dressed and running toward the command center before she was fully awake. Luna Station buzzed with activity. Officers ran between control panels, their faces lit by red emergency lights. The main display showed the outer rim of human space, where dozens of red dots were moving toward human colonies. Report, Sora ordered as she took her position at the command center. Vorthak Fleet, Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Taejin said, his fingers flying over his control panel. 200 ships, maybe more. They hit Kepler 442b first. The colony went dark 12 minutes ago. Sora felt her stomach drop. Kepler 442b had 40,000 people, families, children, farmers who had traveled light years to build new lives among the stars. Any word from Captain Daehyun's patrol fleet? She asked. He's moving to intercept, but he only has 30 ships, Taejin replied. The Vorthak have better weapons, better shields, better everything. Sora nodded grimly. For 3 months since the failed council meeting, everyone had known this was coming. General Hyunwoo had prepared as best he could, but humanity was simply outgunned. Their ships were built for exploration and trade, not war. Their weapons were designed to destroy asteroids and space debris, not enemy vessels. The main screen shifted to show Captain Daehyun's flagship, the Soul. He appeared tired but determined, standing on his bridge as alarms sounded around him. Admiral, we're engaging the enemy fleet now, he reported. They have weapons we've never seen before. Some kind of blue energy beam that cuts right through our armor. The screen showed the battle from the Soul's cameras. Vorthak ships looked like flying fortresses, dark and angular with glowing lines across their hulls. When they fired, beams of bright blue energy reached across space like fingers of death. Where they touched human ships, metal turned to vapor. Daehyun, pull back, Sora ordered. Live to fight another day. Can't do that, Admiral, came the reply. They're heading for New Busan. 80,000 people down there, including my sister's family. Sora watched as human ships tried desperately to stop the alien advance. The KSDF Incheon exploded in a ball of fire. The Mumbai broke apart under concentrated fire. The Cairo managed to ram one Vorthak ship before being destroyed by 3 others. But something strange was happening. Even as human ships died, they were learning. Ship captains started using the asteroids for cover. They fired missiles in coordinated patterns that forced Vorthak ships to move in predictable ways. When direct combat failed, they tried ramming attacks that caught the aliens by surprise. "Sir," Taejin called out. The Mumbai's crew escaped in pods before the ship was destroyed. They're transmitting scanner data about Vorthak weapon signatures. Dr. Bin's voice came over the communication system from his lab deep in Luna Station. "Admiral, I'm receiving the scanner data now. These energy weapons work by exciting molecular bonds in metal alloys. If we can adjust our hull composition, we might be able to reduce the damage." Sora felt a spark of hope. "How long do you need?" "Give me 6 hours and access to the shipyards," Dr. Bin replied. "I can't stop their weapons, but I might be able to slow them down." On the main screen, Captain Daehyun's voice crackled through static. "Admiral, we can't hold them. But we're making them pay for every kilometer." Transmitting all combat data now. The Soul's camera showed the bridge shaking under enemy fire. Sparks flew from control panels and smoke filled the air. Through it all, Daehyun remained calm, giving orders to his crew even as their ship was dying around them. "All remaining ships, break off and regroup at Luna Station," Sora ordered. "That's an order, Captain." "Understood, Admiral." "Soul out." The main screen went dark as the Soul's transmission ended. Sora closed her eyes for a moment, not knowing if her friend was alive or dead. 3 days later, the full scope of the Vorthak attack became clear. 7 colonies had been hit. 3 were completely destroyed. Over 200,000 humans were dead or missing. The Vorthak had also captured several human ships and taken prisoners, but humans were already adapting. Dr. Bin worked 18 hours a day in his lab, studying every piece of Vorthak technology they could find. When the aliens destroyed human ships, they left wreckage behind. When they captured human vessels, they didn't always destroy the computer systems completely. Every fragment of data became a piece of the puzzle. Their plasma weapons use a focused magnetic field to contain the energy beam. Dr. Bin explained to a room full of engineers and ship designers. "But the field has weak points. If we can build armor that disrupts the magnetic containment, the plasma will scatter before it hits our hull." Taejin, who had been promoted to head of ship design, studied the data carefully. "What about our weapons? Can we modify them to be more effective?" "Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and deflect solid projectiles," Dr. Bin replied. "But they seem to have trouble with projectiles that change course after being fired. If we can build missiles that adjust their path at the last second." Within weeks, human shipyards were working around the clock. New armor plating was installed on every available ship. Missiles were redesigned with guidance systems that could fool Vorthak defenses. Most importantly, every ship captain studied the combat recordings from the first battle, learning from both victories and defeats. Captain Daehyun had survived the battle, though his ship had not. Now he commanded a new vessel, the Busan, which was built with everything humans had learned from their first encounter with Vorthak technology. It looked different from earlier human ships with angular armor plates and weapons that could fire in multiple directions. The second Vorthak attack came 2 months later. This time they expected an easy victory. Intelligence reports said human resistance had been broken in the first battle. They were wrong. Admiral Sora commanded the defense from Luna Station, coordinating 40 human ships against a Vorthak force of 80 vessels. The odds were still bad, but not impossible. "All ships, remember your training," she broadcast to the fleet. "Use the asteroids for cover. Fire missiles in waves. Don't try to slug it out with their big ships." The battle was different this time. Human ships moved in coordinated groups using tactics they had developed from studying Vorthak behavior. When plasma beams fired at them, the new armor held longer, giving crews time to change course or return fire. Pilot Haewon led a squadron of small fighters that darted between larger ships like angry wasps. Her ships were too small for heavy weapons, but they carried missiles designed to exploit weaknesses in Vorthak shields. "Fox leader to all fighters," she called over the radio. "Target their weapon ports when they're charging for another shot. That's when their shields are weakest." The fighters dove toward the enemy ships, dodging plasma fire and missile attacks. Several were destroyed, but others got through. Their small missiles couldn't destroy Vorthak ships, but they could damage weapons and sensors. On the ground, preparations were being made for the worst. General Hyunwoo had learned from the first attack that orbital defenses might not be enough. His daughter Ji-young, now a lieutenant in the Marines, was training civilians in guerrilla warfare. If they land troops, don't try to fight them head-on, she told a group of colonists on New Seoul. Hide, strike fast, and disappear. Make them afraid to leave their ships. The second battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, the Vorthak had lost 12 ships while humans had lost only 6. More importantly, humans had captured 2 damaged Vorthak vessels and dozens of prisoners. Dr. Bin could hardly contain his excitement as he studied the captured technology. "Admiral, this is better than Christmas and my birthday combined. We have intact plasma cannons, shield generators, and computer systems. We can reverse engineer all of it." But the most important discovery came from interrogating the prisoners. The Vorthak were confused and angry. They had expected humans to surrender after the first battle. The idea that an inferior species would continue fighting after losing so badly was completely foreign to them. "Why do you not submit?" asked one captured officer through a translation device. "You cannot win. Our empire is vast. Our technology is superior. Your resistance only delays the inevitable." Admiral Sora studied the alien officer carefully. "Because this is our home," she said simply, "and we don't know how to quit." The Vorthak officer's expression showed that he still didn't understand. In his experience, inferior species either submitted or were destroyed. The idea of adaptation and improvement through conflict was beyond his comprehension. That night, Sora called a meeting of all senior officers and scientists. "They're going to keep coming," she told the assembled group, "and each time they'll bring more ships and better weapons. But we have something they don't understand." "What's that, Admiral?" asked Captain Dae-hyun. Sora smiled grimly. "Every time they attack us, we get stronger. Every battle teaches us something new. Every captured piece of their technology makes our ships better. They think they're fighting the same enemy they attacked 3 months ago. They have no idea what we're becoming." Dr. Bin nodded enthusiastically. "Give me 6 more months and our ships will be using Vorthak plasma weapons with human improvements." 2 years had passed since the first Vorthak attack, and the war had changed everything. Admiral Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the New Earth, watching as his fleet prepared for the largest human military operation in history. The ship around him looked nothing like the vessels humanity had built before the war. The hull was covered in armor plates made from a mixture of human steel and Vorthak alloys. The weapons were hybrid systems that combined human engineering with alien technology. Most importantly, the crew wore uniforms that bore the scars and decorations of people who had learned to fight against impossible odds. "Admiral, all ships report ready for jump," reported Commander Tae-jin from his position at the engineering station. The young officer had grown up fast during the war. His job was to keep the hybrid human-alien technology working, which meant learning new things every day. Dae-hyun nodded. "Signal the fleet. We're going to take back Kepler 442b. The planet had been the first to fall to the Vorthak, and it had remained under alien control for 2 years. Intelligence reports said the Vorthak had built a major base there, using human prisoners as forced labor. Getting those people back was more than just a military objective. It was personal. Jump in 3, 2, 1, now. Space twisted around the human fleet as 47 ships entered hyperspace. The technology was stolen from captured Vorthak vessels. But human engineers had made improvements. Where Vorthak ships needed large, power-hungry drives to jump between stars, human ships used smaller, more efficient systems that could be built faster and cheaper. Dr. Bin watched the jump from his laboratory aboard the New Earth. His workspace was filled with alien technology in various stages of being taken apart, studied, and rebuilt. Over the past 2 years, he had become one of the galaxy's leading experts on Vorthak science, though he had learned everything through reverse engineering rather than formal education. "The jump drives are working perfectly," he reported to the bridge. "But I'm still worried about the new plasma cannons. We've only had 3 weeks to test them." Admiral Dae-hyun trusted Dr. Bin's work completely. The scientist had performed miracles, taking alien technology that was centuries ahead of human science And not only understanding it, but improving it. Human ships now carried weapons that were more powerful than anything the Vorthak had when the war started. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Immediately, sensors detected the Vorthak base. It was larger than expected, with orbital platforms and dozens of ships protecting the planet below. "Looks like they've been busy," observed Commander Tae-jin. Admiral Dae-hyun studied the tactical display. "Signal Commodore Haewon. Begin the attack." Commodore Haewon had started the war as a fighter pilot. Now she commanded a squadron of ships that specialized in fast attacks and difficult missions. Her vessels were smaller than the main battle fleet, but they were faster and harder to hit. "Roger that, Admiral." Fox Squadron moving to attack position. Haewon's ships accelerated toward the Vorthak base, using an approach vector that kept them hidden behind the system's asteroid belt. This was a tactic humans had learned from studying Vorthak mistakes. The aliens always attacked directly, using overwhelming force to smash through enemy defenses. Humans had learned to be more creative. The first sign the Vorthak had of the attack was when their outer sensor platforms simply disappeared. Haewon's ships used new stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to alien sensors. By the time the Vorthak realized they were under attack, human ships were already inside their defensive perimeter. "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Dae-hyun ordered. The battle that followed would have been impossible 2 years earlier. Human ships moved with precision and coordination that came from constant practice and shared experience. Their weapons fired in carefully planned patterns that overwhelmed Vorthak shields. Most importantly, they adapted their tactics in real time as the battle developed. Dr. Bin monitored the weapon systems from his laboratory. "Admiral, the plasma cannons are performing better than expected. We're getting 20% more power than Vorthak weapons of the same size." The reason was simple. Human engineers had taken Vorthak plasma technology and applied human manufacturing techniques. Where the aliens built weapons that were elegant and precise, humans built weapons that were efficient and powerful. The result was technology that was cruder but more effective. On the planet below, Lieutenant Colonel Ji Young prepared her Marines for the ground assault. She had been promoted 3 times during the war, not because of politics, but because she had proven herself in battle after battle. Her troops were no longer the same people who had defended the first colonies. They were veterans who had learned to fight aliens on a dozen different worlds. "Remember, we're not just here to win," she told her soldiers as they prepared to board landing craft. "We're here to get our people back. Some of them have been prisoners for 2 years. They're counting on us." The Marines who listened to her were different from any soldiers in human history. They wore armor that combined human engineering with alien technology. Their weapons fired plasma bolts instead of bullets. Most importantly, they had learned to fight enemies who were stronger, faster, and more advanced than they were. The orbital battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Vorthak base was in ruins and most of their ships were destroyed or captured. Human losses were surprisingly light, considering they were attacking a fortified position. But the real victory came on the planet's surface. Lieutenant Colonel Ji Young's Marines found the prison camps where human colonists had been held for 2 years. The conditions were terrible, but the prisoners were alive. More importantly, they had been learning. "They made us work in their factories," explained Dr. Kyung-ho, who had been the chief engineer of the original colony. "But we learned how their technology works. We know how to build their ships, their weapons, even their computers." Ji Young felt a cold smile cross her face. The Vorthak had made another mistake. They thought human prisoners would be a source of free labor. Instead, they had created a group of people who understood alien technology from the inside out. "How many of you learned their systems?" she asked. "All of us," Dr. Kyung-ho replied. "We taught each other. We figured that knowledge might be the only weapon we had." The liberation of Kepler 442b was broadcast across human space. But more importantly, it was broadcast to the Vorthak Empire. For the first time since the war began, humans had not just defended themselves. They had attacked and won. War Commander Thex received the reports in his command center on the Vorthak homeworld. The news was disturbing. Not only had humans defeated a major base, but they had done it with weapons and tactics that seemed impossible. "How are they building ships so quickly?" he demanded of his intelligence officers. "Our report said they had primitive manufacturing capabilities." "Sir, they appear to be using our own technology against us," replied one of his aides. "But they're building things we never designed." Thek studied the battle recordings with growing concern. Human ships moved in ways that Vorthak vessels couldn't match. Their weapons fired in patterns that suggested coordination between ships that should have been impossible. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to learn and adapt during the battle itself. "Get me Ambassador Kale," Thex ordered. "We need to discuss our strategy." When Kale arrived, he found the war commander studying holographic displays that showed human ship designs. The vessels looked like combinations of Vorthak technology and something else entirely. "They're not just copying our technology," Thex said without looking up. "They're improving it." Ambassador Kale examined the displays carefully. "How is that possible?" "Their science is centuries behind ours." "I don't know," Thex admitted. "But look at this." He pointed to a recording of the recent battle. "This human ship uses our plasma cannon design, but it's more powerful than anything we've built. This one has armor that our weapons can barely scratch, and this one moves faster than our best fighters." Kale watched the recordings with growing unease. When the war started, Vorthak victory had seemed certain. Their technology was superior, their military was experienced, and humans were primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. Now, 2 years later, humans were winning battles and improving at a rate that seemed impossible. "What do our scientists say?" Kale asked. Thex's expression darkened. "They're confused. According to everything we know about technological development, this should be impossible. Species don't advance this quickly. It takes centuries to develop new technologies, not months. But humans weren't following the normal rules of technological development. Where other species advanced slowly and carefully, building on established knowledge over generations, humans were learning through direct experience. Every battle taught them something new. Every captured piece of technology became the basis for something better. Dr. Bin demonstrated this during a meeting with human military leaders. "The Vorthak plasma cannon works by using magnetic fields to contain high-energy plasma," he explained, pointing to a holographic display. "But they use a static field configuration that wastes a lot of energy." He manipulated the display to show a new design. "If we use a variable field that adjusts based on the target, we can get much more power with the same energy." 5 years had passed since the first Vorthak attack, and the galaxy had never seen anything like what humans had become. Admiral Sora stood in the command center of the massive space station New Terra, watching displays that showed human fleets across a dozen star systems. Each fleet was more powerful than the entire human military had been when the war started. The station itself was a testament to how much had changed. Built from captured Vorthak technology and human innovation, it was larger than any military base the galaxy had ever seen. It produced ships, weapons, and equipment at a rate that seemed impossible to alien observers. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from all front," reported Captain Minho, who had been promoted to serve as Sora's chief of staff. "General Hyunwoo's forces have broken the siege of Proxima Centauri. Admiral Dae Hyun is advancing on the Vorthak supply depot at Wolf 359, and Commodore Haewon has successfully infiltrated the Rigel system." Sora nodded as she studied the strategic display. Red dots showed Vorthak positions, blue dots showed human forces, and yellow dots showed contested systems. 2 years ago, the map had been almost entirely red. Now blue was spreading across the galaxy like an unstoppable tide. "What's the status of the Planet Killer project?" she asked. Dr. Bin's voice came over the communication system from his research facility deep within the station. "We've successfully reverse-engineered the Vorthak Planet Killer technology, Admiral. But we've also improved it significantly. The Planet Killers had been the Vorthak's attempt to end the war quickly. Massive weapons that could destroy entire worlds from orbit. They were supposed to force human surrender through pure terror. Instead, they had only made humans more determined to win. When the first Planet Killer destroyed New Hiroshima, killing 12 million people in seconds, the galaxy expected human resistance to collapse. Instead, human scientists studied the weapon's energy signature from sensor recordings. Within 6 months, they had built their own version. Within a year, they had built a better one. "Our Planet Killers are more efficient than the Vorthak design," Dr. Bin continued. "They use less energy, charge faster, and can target multiple locations on a world simultaneously. We also solved the mobility problem. The original Vorthak Planet Killers were built into massive space stations that took years to move between star systems. Human Planet Killers were mounted on ships that could travel anywhere in the galaxy. The implications terrified every alien species that had heard about them, but Admiral Sora had no intention of using planet killers on inhabited worlds. The weapons served a different purpose. They made it clear that humans could destroy Vorthak worlds if they chose to. The psychological effect was more powerful than any actual attack. In the Rigel system, Commodore Hay-Wan was demonstrating why the Vorthak had learned to fear her name. Her fleet had appeared without warning, using stealth technology that made them invisible until they opened fire. The Vorthak base never had a chance to call for help. "Fox leader to all ships," she broadcast to her fleet. "Primary targets are the communication arrays and weapon platforms. Remember, we want prisoners and intelligence data." Hay-Wan's ships moved with precision that came from years of experience. Each captain knew exactly what to do without needing detailed orders. This was how humans fought now, like a single organism with many parts, each working toward the same goal. The battle was over in 2 hours. The Vorthak defenders had fought bravely, but they were facing an enemy that had learned from every battle of the war. Human weapons were more powerful, human ships were faster, and human tactics were more flexible than anything the aliens could match. But the real victory came when Hay-Wan's Marines captured the base commander. War Commander Thex himself had been visiting the facility when the attack began. Now he sat in a human holding cell, staring at walls made from technology his own empire had created but could no longer match. Lieutenant Colonel Ji-Young entered the interrogation room wearing power armor that combined human engineering with Vorthak technology. The armor made her look larger and more intimidating, but her voice was calm when she spoke. "War Commander Thex," she said, sitting across from him at a simple metal table. "We meet at last." Thex studied her carefully. He had heard reports about this human female, how she had led ground forces in impossible victories across a dozen worlds. Seeing her in person, he was struck by how young she looked despite the scars that marked her as a veteran of many battles. "You are the one they call the Ghost Walker," he said. "The human who appears from nowhere and disappears like smoke." Ji-Young smiled, though it wasn't a friendly expression. "Your soldiers gave me that name after I liberated the prison camps on Tau Ceti. Do you remember those camps, War Commander? The ones where your forces were conducting medical experiments on human prisoners." Thex's skin color shifted to show shame. Those experiments had been authorized by the High Command, attempts to understand human biology and psychology. They had yielded useful data, but they had also created something the Vorthak hadn't expected, an enemy that would never forgive or forget. The experiments were regrettable, he admitted. But this is war. Such things happen in war. You're right, Ji-Young agreed. Such things do happen in war, which is why your empire is going to lose. Thex looked confused. "I do not understand. The Vorthak Empire is vast. Our resources are nearly unlimited. Even if you have temporary advantages, you cannot match our industrial capacity." Ji-Young leaned forward, her armor making mechanical sounds as it moved. "You still don't understand what you're fighting, do you? You think this is a war between two empires where the bigger one wins?" She stood up and walked to the wall, where a display showed the current strategic situation. Blue human forces were advancing on multiple fronts, while red Vorthak positions were shrinking back toward their core worlds. "This isn't a war between empires," she continued. "This is a war between two different ideas of what intelligent life should be. You believe in hierarchy, control, and submission. We believe in adaptation, learning, and growth." Thex studied the display with growing unease. "Your advances are temporary. When the full might of the Vorthak Empire is brought to bear—" "Your empire is already bringing its full might to bear," Ji-Young interrupted. "And you're losing. Do you know why?" She manipulated the display to show detailed comparisons between human and Vorthak technology. In every category, human systems were now superior to their alien counterparts. "When this war started, your technology was centuries ahead of ours," she explained. "But you made one critical mistake. You assumed the technology gap would remain constant. You didn't account for our ability to learn." The display showed the progression of human technology over the 5 years of the war. Ships, weapons, defenses, and industrial capacity had all improved at a rate that seemed impossible according to normal galactic standards. "Every battle taught us something new," Ji-Young continued. "Every captured piece of your technology became the foundation for something better. Every defeat made us stronger, more determined, more creative." Thex was beginning to understand the scope of the disaster his empire faced. But this is impossible. Species do not advance so quickly. It takes generations to develop new technologies. For your species, maybe, Ji Young replied. But humans don't follow your rules. When we're threatened, we don't just fight back, we evolve. We become something new, something our enemies can't prepare for or defend against. She turned back to face him directly. Your empire made the mistake of thinking we were just another species to be conquered. You didn't realize you were creating your own replacement? On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Dae-hyun was proving her point. His fleet had surrounded the massive Vorthak supply depot at Wolf 359, cutting off resources to 3 entire sectors of the alien empire. The depot's defenses had been considered impregnable, but human ships now carried weapons that could punch through any shield. Admiral, the depot commander is requesting terms for surrender, reported his communications officer. Dae-hyun considered this carefully. The depot contained enough supplies to support human operations for years, as well as technical data that Dr. Bin would find invaluable. But more importantly, its capture would cripple Vorthak operations across an entire region of space. Tell them they can surrender unconditionally, or we can take the depot by force, he replied. Their choice. The surrender came within the hour. Vorthak officers who had once commanded vast fleets now found themselves prisoners of a species they had dismissed as primitive just 5 years earlier, but the most significant development was happening on distant battlefields where Field Marshal Hyun-woo commanded human ground forces. The old general had become something of a legend among human troops, a leader who could win any battle against any odds. His latest campaign was the liberation of Arcturus Prime, the largest Vorthak colony in the contested zone. The planet had been fortified for decades and was defended by the alien empire's best troops. According to every military textbook in the galaxy, it should have taken years to capture and cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Hyun-woo took it in 3 weeks with minimal casualties. The key is not to fight the battle they want you to fight, he explained to his staff officers as they stood in the former Vorthak Command Center. 7 years after the first Vorthak attack, the war was over. Admiral Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of the massive flagship Terra Invicta, watching as the last Vorthak fleet surrendered in the ruins of their home system. Around him, human ships filled space like a steel constellation, each vessel representing technology that had surpassed its alien creators. The Vorthak homeworld still existed, but barely. The final battle had lasted 3 days and had been more of an execution than a fight. Human forces had arrived with weapons the Vorthak couldn't match, tactics they couldn't counter, and a determination that had been forged in 7 years of total war. Admiral, Supreme Commander Vex is requesting permission to come aboard and formally surrender, reported Captain Minho from his position at the communications station. Dae-hyun nodded. Permission granted. Have Admiral So-ra and Field Marshal Hyun-woo join us in the conference room. The surrender ceremony was brief and formal. Supreme Commander Vex, once the most powerful military leader in the Vorthak Empire, looked small and defeated as he handed over his ceremonial weapon to Admiral Dae-hyun. His skin had lost its vibrant green color and had faded to a dull gray that showed his shame and despair. The Vorthak Empire formally surrenders to the human forces, Vex said, his voice barely above a whisper. We ask for mercy for our surviving civilian populations. Admiral So-ra, who had been promoted to Fleet Admiral and now commanded the largest military force in galactic history, spoke calmly but firmly. Civilian populations will be protected. War criminals will be tried. Territory will be administered according to human law until stable governments can be established. Field Marshal Hyun-woo, whose ground forces had liberated hundreds of worlds, added, "Your people will be treated with the same mercy you showed ours." The words carried an ominous weight. The Vorthak had shown little mercy during their occupation of human worlds, conducting experiments on prisoners and enslaving entire populations. Now they would face justice under human law. But the end of the Vorthak War was just the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. 3 months later, the Galactic Council reconvened for the first time since humans had been denied membership 7 years earlier. The chamber looked the same, but everything else had changed. The human delegation entered the chamber with quiet confidence. Admiral Dae-hyun led the group, followed by Fleet Admiral Sora, Field Marshal Hyun-woo, and Dr. Bin. Behind them walked Captain Min-ho, representing the new generation of humans who had grown up during the war and knew no world without alien contact. The other species watched them with mixtures of awe, fear, and respect. These were no longer the primitive newcomers who had begged for membership 7 years ago. These were the representatives of the dominant military and technological power in the known galaxy. Ancient Counselor Veltar rose slowly from his seat, his pale blue skin seeming to glow with inner light. The Zeridian looked even older than before, but his silver eyes were bright with something that might have been satisfaction. 7 years ago, I warned this council about underestimating humanity, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. I told you that humans do not surrender, that they adapt and grow stronger through conflict. Few listened to my words. The chamber was completely silent. Many of the species present had supported the Vorthak position 7 years earlier. Now they sat quietly, afraid to draw attention to themselves. Today we gather to witness the result of that mistake, Veltar continued. The Vorthak Empire, which once controlled 17 star systems and commanded thousands of ships, has been completely defeated by a species they thought primitive. Admiral Dae-hyun stepped forward to address the council. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in impossible battles and won. 7 years ago, humanity sought peaceful membership in the galactic community, he said. We were denied that opportunity. Instead, we were forced to fight for our very survival against an empire that saw us as inferior beings to be conquered or destroyed. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. We did not choose this war, but once it began, we fought it with every resource at our disposal. We adapted, we learned, and we survived. In the process, we became something the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Bin stepped forward carrying a device that projected holographic displays throughout the chamber. The images showed human technology, ships that moved faster than anything the galaxy had known, weapons that could crack planets, manufacturing systems that could build fleets in weeks rather than years. Human technology now surpasses anything in galactic civilization, Dr. Bin announced. We have taken the best achievements of dozens of species and improved upon them. Our ships are faster, our weapons more powerful, our defenses stronger than anything that existed when this war began. The displays showed comparison charts that made the extent of human advancement clear. In every category, human systems were superior to their galactic counterparts by significant margins. But the most impressive presentation came from Captain Min-ho, who represented the generation that had grown up during the war. He was young, confident, and spoke with the authority of someone who had never known defeat. The previous generation of humans wanted to join galactic civilization as junior partners, he said. My generation has a different perspective. We've proven that human methods of innovation and adaptation are superior to traditional galactic approaches. We're not here to join your civilization. We're here to lead it. The words sent shockwaves through the chamber. Many alien species had assumed that humans, having won their war, would be content to take their place as members of the existing galactic order. Instead, they were claiming leadership of that order. Fleet Admiral Sora explained the reality of the situation. Human fleets now patrol 37 star systems. Human technology drives the economies of 12 different species. Human military doctrine is being studied and copied throughout the galaxy. Whether we sought it or not, we have become the dominant power in this region of space. Field Marshal Hyun-woo, whose ground forces had liberated worlds across the galaxy, added a crucial point. We understand the responsibility that comes with this power. We have no interest in conquest for its own sake. But we will not tolerate threats to human security or human interests. The message was clear. Humans were now the dominant power in the galaxy, and they intended to remain so. Engineer Tae-jin, who had been promoted to oversee human industrial operations, presented the most startling revelation of all. Human shipyards are currently producing vessels for 17 different species. Our manufacturing capacity now exceeds the combined output of the rest of galactic civilization. The implications were staggering. In 7 years, humans had gone from being a primitive species to controlling the galaxy's most advanced industrial base. They could build ships, weapons, and equipment faster and better than anyone else. But perhaps the most significant change was demonstrated by former Lieutenant Colonel Ji Young, now General Ji Young, who commanded human military academies throughout former Vorthak space. We are currently training officers from 23 different species in human military doctrine. They come to us because our methods work. The academy programs were producing a new generation of military leaders who understood human approaches to warfare, innovation, and problem-solving. Within a generation, human military thinking would spread throughout the galaxy. As the council session continued, it became clear that the old galactic order was gone forever. Humans didn't just control the most powerful military in the galaxy. They controlled the most advanced technology, the largest industrial base, and the most effective training programs. Other species could resist, submit, or try to find their own path, but they couldn't ignore the new reality. Councillor Veltar rose one final time to address the chamber. "I have lived for over 2,000 years," he said. "I have seen empires rise and fall, species achieve greatness and fade into obscurity. But I have never seen anything like what humans have accomplished." He turned to look directly at the human delegation. "In 7 years, you have achieved what most species take centuries to accomplish. You have not just won a war. You have redefined what is possible in terms of technological and military development." The old Zeridian's expression grew thoughtful. "The question now is what you will do with this power. Will you become conquerors like the Vorthak? Will you impose your will on the galaxy through force?" Admiral Daehyun answered for all humanity. "We will do what we have always done. We will adapt, learn, and grow. We will face new challenges and find new solutions. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves and oppose those who threaten peace." He paused, considering his words carefully. "But we will do all of this as the leading power in galactic civilization. The age of human subservience is over. The age of human leadership has begun." The council session ended with no formal votes or declarations. None were needed. The reality of human dominance was clear to everyone present. The species that had been denied membership 7 years earlier now controlled the destiny of galactic civilization. As the human delegation prepared to leave, a new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It belonged to an alien diplomat from a species that,